Hi, folks. Welcome to Friday's edition of the I Write podcast and videocast. I've got Jimmy Hatton, who's taken a lunch break, especially, and Stuart Lockhead with me today.
Hiya.
I'm Norris Stewart. God, there's so much going on. Today's press conference, which may well be the last one the BBC chooses to broadcast, will be touching both on the presser and the BBC. Brexit, we can't ignore. What else was there? I've forgotten already.
Another poll.
Oh, there's another poll. Yeah, in the Herald, that was a Survation poll, was it not?
Yeah, apparently they still use the phone, so they tend to ask older people.
I have it in my head, this was an online poll.
Was it?
I need to have a quick look at the article. Anyway, Jimmy, did you catch the presser?
I did not, mate. I was busily sat in traffic wondering if I would actually get back here in time to speak to you at all. So, no, didn't see much. But I can imagine it was an awful lot about the BBC, was it?
Well, it's September, so a lot of the questions were about Christmas.
That's a good idea.
See, that's a tricky one, because historically, no, it really is a tricky one. Historically, I think it was after the English Civil War and Cromwell was dead and the king came back. At that period, they discovered that the most important thing for English people was Christmas, because they banned Christmas during that century, and that caused absolute terrible riots. The English love their Christmas. Even to this day in Scotland, people still don't understand what it's like, what it means to be English at Christmas.
I think what we need to do is keep the restrictions for Christmas, but lift them for New Year.
Yeah, because that would really annoy the English even more. Let's be honest, Scots don't care about Christmas. It's New Year. That's your holiday. Christmas is just
it's a festival of money.
Big feed. Aye, a big feed and a big bill. That's what Christmas is.
The one thing I did notice was the question that wasn't asked today by any of our unionist press was, we're really delighted that you're following the rule of six created by the Westminster government. Doesn't that make you feel much better, Miss Sturgeon?
Well, one of them, I think it was somebody at the end brought it up. It's probably the rule of six. Chris Musson, maybe.
It was getting used as a stick to beat the English with last night. The fact that the Scottish are doing it slightly differently in that they're allowing under 12s to not count as part of the six. They've
kind of moved. They've sort of balanced the risk, though, haven't they? Because it's only 2 households in Scotland, 6 people from 2 households, whereas in England it's 6 people, which means 6 households. But Scotland have said it doesn't apply to under 12s.
I did get some intelligence, as they say, from somebody, I'm not going to name them, who regularly, they've got 3 children and 2 parents, so there's 5 of them. They normally have the grandparents on a Wednesday, every Wednesday. That makes 7, so they'd be breaking the law.
What age is our youngest child?
That's all right. Chuck a bairn in a cupboard or pick the grandparent you actually like.
Because if they've got a kid under 12,
I think
they don't count.
Yeah, no, they're over 12.
Well, the parents can go out for a drink. Anyway, anything catch your eye at the presser particularly?
To start with, the knowledge of power. Dr. Nicola Stevens was there. She's an Irish Colleen, which always gets me going. She's
oh dear.
I know, but she's very good. She's the Deputy Chief Medical Officer. I'm surprised they don't call her the Deputy Interim Chief Medical Officer, because they're still calling the other one the Interim Chief Medical Officer.
Are they?
Yeah, I noticed that the
I
other
thought
week.
you got the job. Oh well, never mind.
No.
No, it's Nicola Sturgeon, mate. She'll be looking for a bird to do the job.
Ooh.
Oh, possibly. Could be right. So what did we find out? That the app's been launched. The First Minister and the Deputy Chief Medical Officer were both concerned to explain without being asked the questions, just the issues that people will ask about the app. Will it work? Will it cause there'll be a problem because the poor people and old people won't be able to put it on their phones?
That was the main thrust. The main thrust was, what about folk that don't have smartphones?
And will there be a tip? Is there a tipping point? You've got to get a percentage of people using it, otherwise it doesn't work. Well, no. Does it track where you go? No, it is genuinely anonymous. You don't even, we covered this yesterday, you don't even put in an email account. You don't even have to make one up. I mean, you could put Mickey Mouse at gmail.com, but no, you don't have to put anything in at all.
I think the important bit that came out of that line of questioning was the fact that even if you don't have a phone that can take the app, you can benefit due to, well, kind of app immunity. The more people that take the app and can be traced, the safer you'll be, regardless of whether you've got the app or not.
And
which I thought was a well-made point.
Yeah, the figures we got with 15% of the people use it. That'll reduce the deaths and the number of people getting the virus by 8 or 6%, around about 7%. If 75% of the people use the app, that will reduce deaths by 18%.
And 80% of infections.
I think it was 18.
I thought she said 80, because I was surprised at how high that number was.
That's why I thought, but she didn't repeat it, so I assumed it was the lower one up. Right, just for a change, I wasn't going for the tabloid headline, Norrie.
So, Jimmy, you're kind of anti-app, are you not? Are you going to download this one?
Nah, my phone's too old, mate. I'll let everybody else do it.
Oh,
I didn't like leaving Bluetooth open on my phone, mate. I think it's a security concern that has been absolutely 100% ignored by governments all over the world, because if you use your phone for payment and you leave Bluetooth open, you're open to getting your pocket picked.
Well, I've had 2 instances where people have sent things Bluetooth to other phones that have arrived in my phone. I mean, they were friends, obviously, so we were connected anyway. But
well, I used to do it deliberately, mate. I used to walk into bars and send some obscene porn to everybody that was in there that had been stupid enough to leave their Bluetooth on. Come on, I mean.
Yeah, well, hey.
Well,
anyway.
You're right, though. It hasn't been mentioned.
No, let's go back to the politics of the journalists, because David Wallace Lockhart, the young go-getting BBC fella, he couldn't keep politics out of his question. He was asking about, he said, was it getting more difficult to sell the restrictions? And the question of furlough, you want to extend the furlough. Have you thought about the taxpayers' money? Taxpayers' money. I mean, that's like straight in, oh, I'm a Tory. At that point, the First Minister said, there's no saving of tax because the unemployed, you'd have to pay benefits to the unemployed if you don't give them money on the furlough scheme. In any case, she says, I am able to communicate to as many people as possible. This is unasked, by the way, using this forum at the lectern, and I can look down this camera, and this was unasked.
I think, yeah, this is a big issue. The BBC, encouraged by Lord George Fuchs, an unelected Labour member of the House of Lords.
Alki as well.
Well,
Picks one to no one.
Allegedly.
And I'll just call him one.
Is taking credit for the BBC stopping to broadcast the daily First Minister's presser. Now, this is weird to me because we're seeing growing numbers. We're coming into winter, and they've just launched a new app. All things that make communication vital. The BBC is choosing to cut that communication link to mostly older people, I would suggest, who only have access to telly, not the internet. How do we feel about that? Is this a political move by the BBC?
Of course it is.
Seem to be suggesting it is.
Of course it is. Look, it's not it's not an SNP press briefing. It's a Scottish Government press briefing. We're in the middle of an emergency. If this was flooding and there's a whole week of the main street in Leith being flooded, the BBC would be broadcasting non-stop. This is a pandemic which is much worse and it's ongoing. And in fact, it's on an upswing. And now is not the time to cut the communication.
They
Okay.
didn't give a monkeys. They don't give a damn about Scotland. The new Director General came up, went into BBC Scotland and said, I've had Boris's man on the phone, stop broadcasting Nicola. That's what happened, end of story. You're talking about a Tory speaking to another Tory on the phone, coming up here and telling BBC Scotland to wind their neck in, or they will have an issue with the new Director General. And frankly, that job gives him pretty much complete power over BBC Scotland's budget and their output. So they are doing exactly what they're told by London.
Absolutely. Can't disagree with that.
Can I do a bit of devil's advocate here?
Mm-hmm.
To take your example, Stuart, of a flood in Leith, the difference between the presser and other emergencies is the BBC would interview anybody that was doing SNP bad as well. The pressers cut that ability for the opposition to politicize it.
I can't agree with you there. After all, he gets questioned by the unionist press every briefing. They get to open their gob at every broadcast. Excuse me, Mr. Stewart.
Well, what I'm saying is it's not politicized. It's up to her. She can turn away any political question she wants.
She does.
She admitted that she's occasionally made the mistake of answering one or two, but she says her policy has always been not to answer questions that were political or if they were not on COVID.
And that, I would suggest, is the problem, that the opposition parties want a political platform.
Oh, of course, we know why they want it. They just don't want people to recognise how competent Nicola Sturgeon is and how competent the Scottish Government is.
I've no idea why the opposition in Scotland would want any kind of platform. They just show themselves up as the useless, inadequate fools that they are.
I think I did tweet once that they should watch what they wish for in case they get it.
Aye.
But
give us a question. Give us a leaders debate every Friday. That would be outstanding. The only problem with that would be is you wouldn't ken the cast list from week to week because Labour and the Tories would keep changing their leader.
Well, now that the BBC have cut the communication cable, I fully expect the opposition parties to start complaining about the Scottish Government's lack of communication.
Oh, course.
Right, that'll be the next thing in Scottish questions next week. You never tell the people that says Baroness.
Well, I expect Jackie Baillie to stand up.
Did you hear about her? She'll
need a hand.
She retweeted Lord Fuchs, drunken Lord Fuchs's tweet, saying the BBC should be stopped. And then apparently, as soon as it was stopped, she's deleted her tweet. She didn't want to be associated with it.
No, because this will become a problem. Because one of their attack lines on the app, about the only attack line they have on the app, is that older folk that don't have the internet are unlikely to be able to download the app. Right? So, boom. What are you going to do about that? Are you going to give every old age pensioner in Scotland a smartphone? Why should these people not be cut out of the loop on the app? Blah, 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 blah. And she can turn around and say, well, I had a great communication tool that you and Lord Fuchs, Jackie Baillie, and Lord Fuchs decided wasn't a great communication tool.
Well, look, this is a public health issue. It's not a political issue. It is a public health issue. 95%, maybe more, of what older people, their information they get comes from television. And 95% of that television comes out of London. And we get told morning, noon and night about what the restrictions are in England on this virus and what the duties are and the law and all the rest of it. Well, if there's mixed messaging and people die in Scotland because of mixed messaging, it is the fault of the BBC not broadcasting this live.
Well, the BBC actually tweeted that the reason for the change in policy was they wanted consistency over the UK. Now, it doesn't matter which way you read that.
Aye, at that point, they're going to have to, the BBC are going to have to march into Holyrood, sack Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP, and put a sack of shit in charge, because that's who they've got in London, and that's why the messaging in London is so crap. Because you've got a clown who can't speak his own language, who spraffles and waffles, and they're wanting us to put up with that kind of shitty messaging.
Well, the point, a kind of point I'm making is that that can either be read as the BBC deciding that everybody in the UK should be following Westminster policy, or it can be read that the devolved administrations cannot take a different route to communication because Westminster has chosen not to do daily press briefings.
It shows you as well the fact that no independent broadcasters have made any inkling of doing something similar, because they're in the pocket of the Westminster parties as well. And by the way, didn't buy the crap about Jackie Bailey and George Fawkes. They're taking the heat for the Tories. This is 100% from the Tories.
Well, I think they've both just shot themselves in the foot. Jackie Bailey's realised it.
That's why she did later their tweet.
Down on it.
But can I just read? Sorry, Jeremy.
No, on you go, mate.
I'll give you the tweet, the quote from the First Minister.
I didn't want a queef.
You imagine what you heard, wasn't it me? There was a question from Andrew Learmonth from the National, so it was a planted question almost. But the First Minister asked about the problem, about the BBC changing their policy. It's up to the BBC, she said. This is a public service. And I need to communicate directly, explain the reasoning and the rationale and the understanding, and get people to comply. It is more important now than it was. And for many people, especially the old, the poor, the shielding, it's a unique circumstance, and we need to reach the public.
Well, yeah, and all those arguments are solid. And anybody that's sitting in Holyrood that doesn't support that has got a lot of explaining to do. They can argue that it should only be experts standing up there if they want rid of Nicola. But if they don't have Nicola up there, they don't have a target.
They need a communicator. Yes, they're kind of experts, but they need more importantly, anybody will tell you, the likes of Jason Leach, he's such a powerful communicator. They use him for nearly all their ads on the telly, don't they?
She's the leader of our country. She's the legally elected leader of Scotland. She gets that position because she won it in an election. And the fact that Douglas Ross or Baroness Fattars or anybody else is grumpy about it and wants the same platform, go win it in an election like she did.
Yeah, absolutely. There was another aspect of today's presser which I noticed, which was there were one or two questions about the testing. And there was one question about Jason Leach's quote about it's a bit rubbish, he said, about some aspect of the testing, but he was talking, and I'm not going to go into the detail of what the Deputy Chief Medical Officer said, just that 2 or 3 times, both her and the First Minister kind of said, yes, we're interested, things are looking quite optimistic about treatments and vaccines, but. So that was a more optimistic angle than we've had from this.
I think we have to mention the fact that both Nicola Sturgeon and the medical expert said that he was taken out of context and the way he was quoted.
Oh yeah, I mean, and she did. There was no apology and no need for an apology because he explains things in a way that ordinary people understand things, not the way bloody hack journalists do.
Yeah.
There's an interesting difference between England and Scotland over testing. Scotland had issues for a day a couple of weeks ago where people were getting asked to go from Glasgow up to Inverness or what have you, and they sorted that out within a day. England have been having these issues for a fortnight now. It's now at the point where Tory backbenchers are battering Matt Hancock every time he walks into the chamber because their phones are ringing off the hook. and they can't sort it. So if things are going wrong with testing in Scotland, isn't it interesting to note that when it happened, they sort it?
I'm going to do my devil's advocate thing here. I would be very surprised with something like this if England didn't have more problems just because it's a bigger place.
Aye,
So,
but it's the part of the testing that's causing the issues, Norrie, is the UK part of the testing. It's the Glasgow lab. It's the fact that they're offering people in Reading an option to go to one of these drive-through testing facilities in Inverness that are run by the UK government.
Well,
That's the part that isn't working.
I'm not being completely supportive because they didn't use what they keep referring to as their NHS test and trace is run by private companies. So I'm, that I do not support.
The wonderful world of Circle.
It would be a strange world where a new system, which this basically is, didn't have more teething problems in a bigger country. That's kind of, and I sort of wish that people would take that on board. I don't think
but we get to look on at them having their problems and look smugly at them. That's one of the joys of being Scottish. I don't know if you've seen that cartoon that was floating about yesterday. It was brilliant. Boy talking to the Doug. Boy walking his dog, and a wee Englishman walked past him. He says, Can your dog do anything clever? He says, aye, he can talk. So Doug says, woof. He says, that's not clever. Any dog can say that. And then Doug goes, mate, your water's pish and you have to pay for your own prescriptions. Sorry, I just thought I'd throw that in there because it entertained me.
It's
that's good. It's good. One aspect that neither of you mentioned when it comes to testing, you can go up a level. Yes, it's been run by Serco and in the UK, Deloitte. Neither of these companies know anything about it. The entire management of this pandemic by the UK government, they've used it as an opportunity to hand out contracts left, right, and centre because it's an emergency and give loads and millions, if not billions, of money to their pals. Not on whether they can do the job, but because they know.
Yeah,
I'm shocked that you would think that.
There's a growing kickback against that. Interesting choice of the word kickback. There's a growing pushback against that. The Guardian, the likes of George Monbiot, Julian Mon at the Good Law Project, they are questioning absolutely everything at the moment because they think, like Stuart said, it's not just millions, it could be billions that have been handed to. And the only reason politicians hand out contracts to big companies is so there's a kickback either personally to them or to their party. Because have we ever seen Serco, for example, run anything and do it better than the supposed disaster that is public service do these things?
Well, it's the disaster of dogma, isn't it? I mean, it's, market economy taken to the nth.
Yeah, it is, mate, but it also destroys people's lives and livelihoods because Serco will go into whatever they go into. And the first thing they do is get rid of the people that are good at their job, because these people that are good at their job in public life get paid decent money. Serco only want to pay decent money. They want to pay monkeys. They want to pay peanuts. They employ monkeys, pay them peanuts, and then cream off as much out of the contract as possible.
But in the context of the pandemic, it's worse than that. Not only are they making a fortune, in other words, the corruption is, you can smell it from here. People were dying because of their incompetence. And it's what, in fact, their criminality. People are dying because of this pandemic, because of this government. That's the biggest.
You need to get.
Well, it's a country that we live in.
Message here, Stuart. That none of this is the government's fault. This is all the people's fault.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Have you not been listening?
It's a country we live in, Norrie. I was reading something this morning, and I didn't know. We were talking about the app earlier and how you register for it and what have you. I didn't know you could register a company in any name you like. Apparently there are 4,000 company owners in this country at the moment under the age of 2.
Mickey Mouse being one of them.
Aye.
And people are registered in companies in the names of
Aye. Fashnik and nonsense like that. Aye, you make up any name you like, and you can be the owner of that company. Wonderful. I wonder if anybody's ever registered a company.
Well, and another aspect that was a wee gem came out of that same article. What was it? That to the City of London, if there is a company based in the City of London, they don't have to answer freedom of information requests.
Aye.
They're exempt.
Quite right too. Why should people with money have to answer freedom of information requests?
Can I hire an address within the square mile? Could I use that as a home address? Because that would be handy.
I put a brass plate up.
You even get your own representative to sit behind the speaker in the House of Commons.
I wouldn't sit behind the speaker, mate. I'd get one of the big, kind of like the giant cotton wool earbuds that they used on.
Oh, yeah.
Let Boris away with something. Lindsay Hoyle's got one of the faces you wouldn't tire us in his lug.
Was that the fast show, was it? No?
No, what was that called again? I can't
remember. Gladiators. They used to fight with the big giant cotton buds.
Oh, all right. I'm thinking of another show. The guy that had the big...
Talking about lies and corruption, I think we should maybe move on to Brexit. Or what we're thinking.
Well,
Brexit Burach. This is going to run and run and run. Ireland is obviously not happy with the latest criminality, admitted in the House of Commons criminality about breaking international treaties, international law. It looks like the EU is going to take this pretty seriously. The statement from Barnier last night was fairly cutting. Most of Europe seems happy now to consider the UK a rogue state. As we've been saying for a week or more now, the USA is not very happy about the effect on the Good Friday Agreement. Has Boris gone too far, I suppose, is the real question. Jimmy?
Possibly, mate. I think we may have to wait all the way till November to find out. Because if Donald Trump loses the American election, Boris will do a U-turn faster than any of the U-turns he's done before and come up with a deal to suit the EU, because he'll know at that point that he's not getting anything from America. And the people who are behind him, the people who have backed Boris, your Crispin O'Deas and your Steve Bannons and that, who have all got their heads back down under the parapet noticeably over the last couple of months, because they expect that, they think their project is falling apart. They think Donald Trump has let them down, he can't get re-elected, and this entire Atlanticism project, whatever it was meant to be, is going to fall apart. The only thing they can do now is make as much as they can out of it, fill their bank balances, and hopefully get away scot-free.
But can the EU sign any deal with the UK now?
No, I can't.
I very much doubt it.
Stuart?
No, I don't see how they can. We discovered that looking back, Fintan O'Toole summed up some of it, which we kind of already knew. Well, the idea that they just come up with this wheeze about breaking the law and dumping the Northern Ireland Protocol recently is not true. Dominic Cummings sent a letter to Dear Vote Leave activists. Don't worry about the so-called permanent commitments to this historically abysmal cabinet are trying to make on our behalf. He was talking about Theresa May. They are not permanent, and a serious government, one not cowed by officials and their bullshit legal advice, which they have been herded ministers like sheep, will dispense with these commitments. And he was talking about the Northern Ireland Protocol. They plan to dump it. They always plan to dump it.
But this was 2017.
It was in a blog in 2017. It was in a blog in 2017, mate, that he had no intention of... Basically, Dominic Cummings, he could tell you to the cows come home he maybe wants a deal. The reality is he wants a no deal because he's been instructed by his masters to ensure a no deal. Or if they get a deal at the last minute, it's going to be such a crappy deal that the markets will collapse and they will still make fortunes by shorting every position they can.
But I mean, sitting in Scotland, I mean, fishing is a very emotive issue, right? So are we to presume from now on, every deal they make with the EU, they can say behind their hands, don't worry, we'll change it later. So if they sell out fishing again, are they going to stand at the next Holyrood elections, Baroness Davidson and her team, and go, don't worry, Scottish fisher folk, we've only given away half your fishing for a couple of years, we'll take it back later?
Nori, why should they change? They've been getting away with it, and particularly it's accelerating. You just go back to Dominic Cummings' eye test and his drive to Barnard Castle. It's been going on for a lot longer than that, and they lie. Nobody resigns anymore. They lie. They get caught out lying. They make U-turns. They don't keep their word, and nothing. There are no consequences anymore for this government.
Is there a consequence for the country, though? I mean, does this now entitle us to turn around and say, do you see that treaty of union? Well, we're going to keep the good bits and dump the bad bits, i.e. we're taking our independence.
I don't think Nicola is the kind of leader that will say that.
But can they argue if we do? They will argue, obviously, because hypocrisy is another main tenet of this Tory government.
When it comes to us, mate, they can't afford Scotland to be independent. It's not just about, as I've said before, it's not just about the money. It's about the fact that England would then go hold it. Scotland's actually doing all right, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. And they'll have had, at that point, if it's 20 years down the line, they'll have had at least 15 years of austerity, because London has to get its money from somewhere, and if it can't grab ours, it'll be taking everything with Yorkshire and Lancashire and what have you.
I don't think it'll take that long, Jimmy. I really don't. I think that the differentiation would be quite stark quite quickly, because we're not going to lose free education.
Already is, mate. I think it already is. It's just that it's not reported down south. All they get to hear about is that we're getting free stuff and they're paying for it.
Aye.
Can you imagine what happens when we keep our free stuff and we're paying for it ourselves, and they go, hold it. So it turns out we weren't subsidising Scotland. So why are we not getting that? How come all these billionaires in the southeast, how come they've all made fortunes over the last 5, 6, 7 decades, ripping up public service and introducing the market? And all this time they tell us that we were all in it together. The only people that are suffering right now are working class people all throughout the UK.
Yeah.
The people that were poor when we were kids are still poor. They might have dressed it up. You might have, the school down the road might look nicer than it did back in the 70s, but it's still a crap hole. It's still got the worst people on the planet running it, because the Tories are in charge. In my whole lifetime, we've never had a decent Labour government. We got about 2 or 3 years for Tony Blair, and then he got absolutely souped in to warmongering. And, I mean, you look at that Labour government, financially they've done right. I didn't want to say anything nice about Gordon Brown. And fiscally they've done well. They paid back the war debt. They spent the increase in NHS spending and school spending, and that was superb. They've done some great things, but at the end of the day...
And lowered child poverty immensely.
Aye, but at the end of the day, they were pink Tories. They were Tories with a hint of social conscience about them. Hence, and you almost got a Tory with a social conscience that beat them when you got David Cameron. But my God, the Conservative Party got rid of that quick enough, didn't they?
Why is David Cameron not being in front of the cameras? Every other ex-Tory leader's been in front of the cameras.
He's probably too busy spending his wife's money, mate. He doesn't need to go out and earn like the rest of the ex-Tory leaders do. And John Major wasn't a rich man. Maggie Thatcher wasn't. Cameron married an Astor, mate. So he's probably far too busy spending her money to waste his time worrying about oiks like us.
He's an Etonian as well, of course. So we think what? We are now an international pariah as a country? Stuart?
I think London is.
They have got good news. Apparently they signed their first real trade deal today with Japan.
Aye.
Which looks, I think, a bit like the European trade deal, does it not?
Yeah, apparently we send them over £600,000 worth of cheese every year, Norrie, so it's well worth it.
Cheese, yep,
Aye.
cheese mountains. That's what we need. Mountains of cheese. Talking about independence, as I was trying to bring us on to the latest Salvation poll, as reported by the Herald, of all papers. 53% of Scotland want independence, 47 are against it. Is this good news or bad news? Is this a drop in support or?
Hold it. I thought I didn't see that. I've only seen bits of the poll. I thought it was 53% would vote SNP next year. I didn't realise it was an indie poll.
Oh, sorry. Maybe you're right.
It was
51% will vote SNP. 53% will vote for independence.
And the last time Survation polled people about independence, it was 50-50.
That's a nice wee bump. A 3% bump on Survation's actually probably worth about 4 or 5% anywhere else. Eh?
And the rest of them are, yes, 21, 41, 47, 50, yeah. So the more than half the population of this country will vote for the SNP when it comes to an election. Voting intentions, constituency vote, actually 53%. So it is, yes, they're both the same, 53% for independence and 53% for the SNP and the constituency vote. And as I would say, I know you dispute this, Norrie, but I'm pretty sure Survation is the polling company that does use the phone, whereas most of the other ones now use online, and that tends to get an older cohort, as they say.
I'm saying that because it stood out to me in the article.
I've read the article right now. Well, just before
it doesn't say it, no?
No, it doesn't say it. But you could still be right. We could both be. We could have another fight. You want? Ready?
No. Salvation conducted the online poll of 1,018 people aged 16 and over.
But you're right.
Oh, right. What did they?
Norman.
Yeah.
Well done.
Because it jumped out to me, because I, like you, thought they normally did phone polls. So maybe not read too much into it if it was an online poll. Because they do tend to favour independence and the younger demographic.
All right. No, so you're right.
Is that because the Stone Age Tory supporters didn't have internet in their caves?
Aye, basically. And they don't live in caves, Jimmy. They live in Rolls Royces.
All right. Oh.
Anyway, it's a 3% move from the last time, or 6%, depending how you count it.
That's a good sign. I'm still fairly convinced that we'll see a 1% rise per month all the way to May in independence
You've been
support.
following that for a while, mate, and if we do, you're looking at 60%. 60% is a magic number for an awful lot of commentators who sit on the fence and like to call themselves neutral. But if there's my God, if there was a 60% vote for this,
well, I'm becoming
a high 50s vote for the SNP and 60% for Indy, I think you'd get a few of these supposed neutral journalists who might start thinking, I'm going to be a job unless I switch my position here.
I've noticed that there are a lot more positive Scottish government, a lot more. There are some positive stories in the Herald for the SNP government. I can't remember which one it was today, but there was another one today. There was one yesterday, day before, about good stuff in the Scottish NHS. And I'm wondering if there's a slight editorial softening towards the government of Scotland.
I think you're being both being over optimistic. Look at the trend of actions by this government. Power grab.
Oh, you're talking about Westminster government here.
Yes, the power grab. I mean, what are we likely to see? They're going to spend money directly. They're going to give money directly to councils.
Do we think they're going to get this bill through the House of Lords?
Well, there's a good question, but generally speaking, they've eviscerated the judiciary in London, the civil service in London. They're having a go at the devolved parliaments at the moment, the devolved governments. What powers are going? Yes, I mean, I hate to burst your bubble, guys.
Well, sure, I'm not disagreeing with you. And I mean, it's a position I've held for a long time that this government will basically do exactly what it wants. And it will not take into account the cost, either long-term or short-term, because as far as they're concerned, they've got 4.5 years with an 80-seat majority, and they can do what they want. They'll eviscerate the civil service. We'll turn into Malta, where every time there's a political colour change, all the civil servants lose their job. And that's right down to guys working on the docks. And supporters of the party who've just taken power get those jobs. That's what we're seeing now. We're becoming a banana republic.
I genuinely think they might struggle. I think the House of Lords might hold up.
They can only stop it for a while, Jimmy.
No, the House of Lords can stop a bill for a year, mate.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They can only stop it. They can't get rid of it.
But I'm not sure they'd do it to help Scotland, but a year would be useful.
But look, even if we get as far as a legal referendum, and the referendum is 60% for yes, do you think it's impossible for this current government to refuse to negotiate independence?
If we do get a referendum and we win the referendum, it doesn't matter if they negotiate independence.
If they refuse,
it doesn't matter. If they don't want to negotiate, fine.
At that point,
we'll order the nuclear subs out into the Irish Sea.
At that point, does the SNP government have to declare UDI then? If they
no, it wouldn't be UDI if there was a vote for independence. It's a democratic decision by the people of Scotland.
Right, but look what's happening with the election in the presidential election in America. Trump and his allies are rubbishing this election all the way at the moment. Remember, there was an election a few years ago and it was all about hanging chads. It went to court and we had to wait for weeks before the election was announced.
Yeah.
Now, Trump's heading that way with his presidential election. Can you not see the Tories in this country going down that route?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what they do.
Trump will get toughed out in his arse by his own supporters, mate. The Republican Party will throw him out of Pennsylvania Avenue on their own. They'll no need anybody's help. He can sit there and claim that he's won the election all he wants. He will be fired out. I noticed that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs came out yesterday and said, or a couple of days ago, and said there is no danger that they will be backing anybody, regardless of what claims they make the day after the election.
And they swear their allegiance.
The US military is neutral.
Yes, they swear their allegiance to the Constitution, not to the president.
But they did say that they won't. I mean, if Trump refuses to leave the White House, they have said they won't go marching in and force them out.
But there's no need to, I tell you, mate. If Trump refuses to leave, the Republicans on the Hill will go up there and drag him out by what's left of the heat on his hair. He'll have handed the White House, the Senate and Congress to the Democratic Party by the end of this campaign.
And they'll be dragging him to jail.
Aye, that's where he's going to end up. Him and half his family are going to end up in a nice wee jail somewhere.
Aye, no bad thing. Right, lads.
I didn't think Boris would have the gumption to go there with Scotland. I'm not so sure Boris will actually be a long-term PM. I'm beginning to believe the rumours that are coming to London that Michael Gove is absolutely certain to replace him. But regardless,
no
if
use
Scotland
to
wins,
us.
if Scotland wins a referendum, what does England do? They've got to come to an arrangement. They can't go to war with us. I mean, they can't put troops on the streets. Christ, quarter of their troops are ours.
And as we discussed yesterday, remember the nukes are really America's nukes. So America is going to want a negotiation.
Basically, America will tell them to negotiate at that point. Aye, too big a Scottish diaspora over there for them for
I
it not to
think
be an
so.
issue.
And I would imagine that the Irish Americans would be supportive as well.
Mate, it's not just the Irish and us. It's the whole planet would like to thumb their nose and rub England's nose in a wee bit of this or that. Can find a
And,
nice pile of dog poo and rub an English bugle into it. There's plenty of people that like to do that.
and I would imagine Europe would at least remain neutral, if not be supportive.
There'll be a Cayley at the UN the day after we vote for independence, and everybody will be there apart from the Brits. They'll be the ones left with their nose pressed up against the window going, he's a bit haggis.
Stuart, anything to finish on, Jimmy?
Not for me.
No? Is that us?
Mm-hmm.
We covered everything. There must be a problem we haven't solved.
I'm fed up with the bloody weather. Summer finished somewhere about the 28th of August, and it's been windy and wet every bloody day since.
Well, the sun's shining down in Constitution Street, mate.
Aye, it's actually, but it's no raining today. It's actually quite nice. It's been talk about 4 seasons in one day, mate. It was blowing a gale this morning in Baltic, but it's now quite pleasant now the rain stopped.
Baltic and Baltic Street.
Mm. Oh, talking of Baltic Street, I'll do that off here.
Okay. Oh dear. Well, thank you, Jimmy Hutton, for taking your lunch break with us, and Stuart Lockhead for doing what you do every day anyway. You and I are going to have to get jobs, Stuart. That would be a terrible thing, I know, but
I'll tell you what job I've got lined up for you in a minute.
okay. Thanks for listening, folks, and we'll have a day off tomorrow, and we'll catch up with you on Sunday. Cheers for now, folks.